I was just going to talk to you anyway. I just thought, what would be really interesting to me is, how, for me, look, when I studied cryptozoology, there was a starting point of
Hmm.
interest. Something happened, or some point of interest just grew and grew and grew. And before I knew it, I was really into it, doing it all the time. And I know it's similar with other people who are into to paranormal and ghosts and other things that either there's an experience that you had, or there's some point of interest. It just, something that took you and said, yeah, I've got to find out more about this. So what was that for you?
Yeah. So I think like most paranormal investigators I speak to usually have a story which starts out in childhood, like they lived in a haunted house or they
Mm.
had an experience when they were very young. Um, I kind of started getting into the paranormal more in my adult life. Although as a child, my dad, would let me watch horror films. So I know. So I remember watching, It,
Oh
Child's
gosh.
Play, Halloween. I think it's Bad Taste.
Oh
Um,
gosh. Bad
yes,
Taste. A
yes,
very early Peter Jackson movie.
yes, but yes,
Yeah.
yes. I was probably 7, 8, 9 watching that,
Okay.
and yeah, there was no control there. So I kind of, I guess my threshold for things that would shock me was heightened, so I or lowered, I can't think, but yeah, so I just kind of started to, I guess, search for things that would terrify me, so as I got older and I started, watching television programs of investigators going out into haunted buildings and stuff, I was like, oh wow, that's awesome, I want to do that. So it was probably 9 years ago. I went on a paranormal investigation with like a local team. They put on an event. And then a few months later, they put out an advert on Facebook saying, we're looking for people to join our team. So I joined this paranormal team. We were putting on events for members of the public. We got to go to some places all around the UK. It was fantastic. And then, I ended up having my daughter. Things kind of got in the way. So I took a bit of a break. But the paranormal was, I think it's just always been something that interested me. It's that one constant in my life. I seem to be someone who picks up a hobby, does it for 6 months, and then I get bored and I move on to something else. But the paranormal has always been consistent.
So it just basically, it's something that just keeps you coming for
Yeah,
more.
yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. And it's something I found with other, let's say, mysterious or fringe pursuits as well. There's
Hmm.
always something extra, or something intangible or unattainable about it. It's that next level in those early platform games where you never can quite get to there's always a next bit you've got to get to find out really what the truth behind something is.
Yeah.
I was wondering, when it comes to paranormal, that and especially things like ghost hunting, you go into haunted houses, you're taking equipment like EMF meters, is that right? And
Yeah.
I got shown by the Gloucester paranormal boys, really nice bunch of guys.
Lovely guys.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so good. I just really like those guys a lot. They showed me an Alice box, and I was really
Yeah.
confused as to how it worked because we were inside, I think it was Little Dean Jail in the Forest of
Fab.
Dean.
Yeah.
So that was, and it was the exhibits are spooky enough. So if you don't feel
Yeah.
anything, with the lights on in there, you definitely feel it when they're out.
Yeah.
And they had this EMF meter going off constantly. But when I
Mm.
held it, nothing happened. And then they had this Alice box that was really, for all intents and purposes, corresponding in many respects to some of the rooms and the
Mm.
stories in the rooms that we're investigating. I found that kind of odd, but I don't understand how it works because to me it just looked like a tablet, right? This is
Yeah.
like a tablet. I'm assuming it's hooked up to the internet somehow, has a mic on it or something. Do you know much
It's
about that?
an
How does it
Yeah.
work?
So the Alice Box is an app.
Hmm.
So you can download it to your phone. I've got it on my phone because it is fun on investigations.
Hmm.
If you start to get words which correspond with what you're asking, and a bit maybe about the history of the building, and a word pops up which collaborate, like what's the word? But yeah, it just
Corroborates.
corroborates. That's the word.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's it does get exciting, but there's been times where I've had it on and the words are so random, it doesn't make any sense, and I'm just a bit like, oh, okay, and I've been on investigation. It's amazing how your brain can sometimes interpret things, and sometimes a word like fire will pop up and someone will go, oh, did you die in a fire? And then it's like,
2 pints of milk.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And it's amazing how you can get words and you can try to fit them together to fit a narrative. So I do take those apps with a pinch of salt, but not to say that, there've been times when, the words have popped up, which, sometimes I've been there where I've had sentences and the people that I've been with have said, like, it shouldn't say sentences, it should say single words. And I've got, I was killed.
Oh, wow.
So that was like, quite exciting.
Wow.
But do you know what? All the gadgets and apps, they're fun. They really are, because they're, they've got the flashing lights, the loud noises. They make what could potentially be quite a quiet, dull investigation quite exciting, but there's lots of rational explanations for why the lights would go off or why the EMF meter would be going off, because I guess the EMF meter, which is the electromagnetic field detector, things such as a mobile phone or a video camera or anything that emits any sort of electricity could make the device go off.
So suppose where we were in Littledean Jail, if you're in a building that's essentially a tourist attraction, there's going to be lots of hidden electrical sources everywhere.
Lights, everything. Well, originally these devices, the little kind of EMF meters with the lights on, electricians would use them because it would be great to hold up to a wall and you would be like, okay, well, it's flashing here, this is where the wiring is. So a lot of the equipment actually came from very mundane purposes. But as investigators, we've kind of got quite creative with how we can use them within our investigations.
I think it's fantastic, actually, that there is essentially a toolkit that people are developing or have developed that's supposed to locate otherworldly presences. I was curious about the practice of ghost hunting that we're currently in, though, because it's, I suppose, the same way as Bigfoot has become a big thing again, let's say since 2011 when the Finding Bigfoot show came out. Since then, it's really snowballed into this big thing, and people are having sightings and footprints in cars all over the place all the time. Ghost hunting too is, you could say, like 1,000 times bigger, especially from a media perspective.
Yeah.
And there's a whole industry around it. But I remember this, remember the 19th century Victorian craze for paranormal pursuits of spiritualist sort of seances and ghost hunting and all of this kind of stuff. And are we living through, even if it's completely genuine, by the way, are we living through a sort of a retroactive resurgence of ghost hunters similar to what we witnessed there during the 19th century? Or is this modern sensation of ghosts, is it more of a continuation of what's just been recorded, by many, many witnesses throughout the history of the world?
Yeah, I don't even think our style of investigating has actually changed that much since the Victorian era, because, what they know as seances was sitting around, calling out, they started off asking for taps on the wall. Spiritualist movement in the Victorian era, and they started off asking for taps, and they would hear taps and cracks and all those types of noise, and they would spell out the alphabet, and the spirit would knock or tap when it wanted to stop at a letter and stuff. And that style of investigating got quite time consuming, which is when we moved over to the Ouija board. And, they started using that to spell out messages. But yeah, I'm not sure really whether, yeah, I don't think, like, on all the investigations I've been on most recently, it does tend to start with the whole, okay, they're going to sit down and we're going to call out, and we're going to ask for a noise, ask for a tap or something, so the style hasn't really changed that much, but we've just got creative with the gadgets. Like, people now are very it's very divisive on what people think of them, but the cat balls,
I don't know what they are.
so they are little balls of plastic that people buy for their cats, and when they get pushed, the lights flash, and then when they're still, the lights go off. So again, it's a cheap piece of equipment, because you can get a pack of 4 for a £5 online or something, and so people would take them on investigations, put these tiny little balls at the top of the stairs, and they're like encouraging the spirit or ghost to push this ball, because it's very minute, it's small, it's not too heavy, it shouldn't be too difficult. So yeah, people are getting creative now.
Wow. Could it, I mean, the obvious question, I guess, would be, could a draft blow the ball or no?
Possibly,
Okay.
or it's got a tiny battery in it. The battery could be dying, and it could flash. There's
Okay.
a multitude of reasons what could set this ball off,
Okay.
but movement, anything.
So this is one of the things we have, so things that cause more arguments than they
Yeah.
do solve dilemmas within the community. People,
Yeah.
searching for these things. What about the different types of, let's say, for ghosts, for example, not just paranormal entities? Like, somebody was talking to me about residuals. No, residuals, as I understand it, are ghosts that walk a certain path.
Yeah.
Constantly, again and again, the grey lady of the castle, that kind of
Yeah.
ghost. And somebody would mention something to do with stone tape theory too. So they say, oh, that's because of the stone tape theory. Do you know much about that?
I've heard of the stone tape
Yeah.
theory. I think it is quite similar to the idea of residual hauntings, where
Yes.
the residual haunting is just a replaying of a certain event. So that's the spirits that you'll see kind of only from the waist up, because they were from 200 years ago when the floor level was either lower or higher. So they are still walking the path that they used to walk, apart from our world now and our time now, the floor's changed, but theirs hasn't. They don't interact with us. We don't interact with them. And I'm pretty sure that the stone tape theory is something similar. It's like that imprinting of a traumatic event, or a very high intensity event that just gets imprinted in a building that just replays over and over.
So essentially, we're looking at a movie that's being replayed. Only, as you say, sometimes when the image is disrupted by something in the way of the projector, this be the old
Yeah.
style projector.
Yeah.
That's what we're looking at, and that's why it's always the same and walks the same route.
Yeah.
Could that be something to do, in your opinion? I know you don't know a lot about it, but something to do with conditions being recreated. So when we were in university, we did the pinhole camera experiment.
Yeah.
You get a magnetic paper and you stick it inside this box with a little hole in it. You take it out into the sun. Whatever's in front of it gets recorded onto the paper with
Oh,
the
wow.
with the ultraviolet rays, the UV rays. Can actually make, and you can go in and you can develop it, and you've captured an image, I suppose, in the most basic way that camera works. But
Yeah, that's cool.
naturally, and the person that told me about this theory said, well, that's what's happening. Somehow that building has created an environment in which the image or the event can be captured
Yeah.
and replayed holographically, almost like a film happening over
Yeah.
and over again when the conditions are right.
Yeah. Well, you do hear about kind of hauntings happening on a specific date, or when the weather conditions are right. Like, a lot of investigators seem to have this idea that activity is stirred up when there's a storm, where there's electricity in the air, or water as well seems to be present in a lot of ghost stories. As they say that water is a kind of I don't know, just increase paranormal activity. But I think definitely, I don't see why not. That could definitely be a plausible explanation. Like the environment has to be right, the settings have to be right, maybe even the time and the date, even the people involved. There's you hear stories of people say, the ghosts will only interact with males, or this spirit will only interact with females. So yeah, anything is possible.
I mean, and that's something separate then, isn't it? When it's when it's interacting with people.
Yeah.
So when the stone tape theory was described to me, I thought, okay, well, so that's the answer to all the stuff. But then someone said, well, hang on, what about poltergeists? Where something is some kind of physical disturbances happening. Some it can be noises, can be objects, can be even physical attacks of some kind happening in a location. Now, if the stone tape theory is, let's say, for sake of argument, a recording playing again, when the conditions are right, well, what is a poltergeist?
So people going on investigations, they will never have any sort of interaction with residual spirits or ghosts because they aren't aware of us. So they would not interact with us. You do have then intelligent spirits, and they could be spirits that I guess some people believe are stuck. So people that have, unfinished business, as they say. There's the spirits that died in a negative way. They want to put their story straight. So you do have those types of spirits. So what poltergeists are, or what people tend to believe poltergeists are, is they're not an external intelligent spirit. It's actually the manifestation of an individual's energy. So I'm currently reading, which is fantastic, Deliverance by Reverend Jason Bray. So he's a deliverance minister. Gets called out to come to people's houses who believe that they are having a spiritual attack or paranormal phenomena. And he, he's fantastic. He has gone through, training. He says that, to be in the role that he is in, he had to go and study psychology, because a lot of the time the individuals that he interacts with is more of a psychological case more than it is paranormal. But he describes poltergeist activity. So he had, a woman that was living with her son, who was a teenager. They had a bit of a tense relationship. They weren't communicating well with each other. They were quite angry with each other. And she started noticing things would go moving. Things would be thrown across the room when her and her son were in the same room. And she was convinced that there was going to be, a very angry spirit. So Reverend Bray goes to her house. He analyzes the whole situation, and he said, from my personal experience, I believe that this is poltergeist. And obviously people hear the word poltergeist and they think of the film, and they think, oh my God, this is the most terrifying thing in the world. And he says, he explained to her that actually poltergeist energy comes from someone. So somebody within that household is the conduit for that poltergeist activity. So this woman was like, oh, so I'm causing this? And he was like, yes, but don't worry. He goes, you just need to focus on the relationship with your son, talk more, because, there are things that neither of you are saying, you're angry with each other, there's things that you're not saying, and it's the energy has to come out in some way. So he was describing lightning strikes. It's that, intense burst of energy, and it's got to come out some way.
Oh, so when you can feel the static afterwards, or before even, it's building up, there's friction. That's so emotional energy essentially occupying his space. That's very interesting. Are you saying that she is the conduit for the poltergeist to come through, or that she is creating, her energy is creating the event itself?
Yeah, Her energy is creating the event.
Okay.
Yeah, so the poltergeist isn't a its own individual entity. Someone within the household is causing that activity, which is why lots of cases of lots of poltergeist cases, there are usually teenagers involved. It's that tough age where they're going from child to an adult. Usually relationships get a bit tense within the family. And, when you do start to research poltergeist cases, there are usually teenagers involved.
Nearly always teenagers involved. That is very, very interesting. My goodness. That's almost like a revelation to me, actually. And but I'm wondering now, thinking back to my teenage years, which sadly were like really, 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 really long ago. Yeah, I'm thinking that it's surprising that nobody got hit with a cup.
Yeah.
Stuff flying off the shelves during that time, because of course we all have those very, very tense emotions, don't we? And I guess some people in my house lucked out. Now, moving on to things like haunted houses. So obviously, it was one of the first things you did. You went to a haunted location, right, to check this out. And these can be anywhere, right? So it can be, battlefields, forts, cemeteries, schools, houses, castles, any location at all. It doesn't have to be really, really old. I mean, I would assume that most of the hauntings that you investigate are locations that have a certain age to them in history, so it's old enough for people to have died there. But does this also affect very new places and properties where for some reason somebody has died and they're making their presence known?
Yeah, so I think people do tend to see old buildings and go, oh, it's definitely haunted, and kind of forget about the new builds, the homes that have only been built 5-10 years ago. But what a lot of people believe as well is that the land that the property is on could have some effect on potential hauntings. So is the property built on top of, a burial site? Is the property built on top of it's going to go on to ley lines. This is a whole different topic, but so there could be a number of reasons why a newer property could be haunted. But I don't know. I guess it looks better, doesn't it, when it's a creepy old Gothic mansion rather than a Bloor Homes.
Apart from like a new build on a previous greenbelt site. I suppose essentially, when we're looking for things, we want them to be in the right packaging, don't we? We want the right uniform, and perhaps that's got a lot to do with it. But I always wondered, are there new ghosts? In the sense, if the ghost thing is real, are there new ghosts? People have just died last week, and Patrick Swayze trying to push that penny across the desk to tell you where the hidden gold is, or whatever the thing is that's going on. And not a joke, I jest, but not in a sense of mockery. But there must be. If they're all ghosts, there must be new ones. And is that something you've encountered along your travels?
So I haven't personally encountered any new their experiences of encountering a ghost. It's the Victorian lady and the man with a top hat and black suit and everything, and you don't get the but people, I think I have heard of individuals having personal encounters with loved ones who have, recently passed a week or a month ago, and they will walk into the bedroom and see their loved one stood there, and their loved one will almost give them a smile or acknowledge them, and then they'll just vanish. So, I think, I don't think it's as documented, because it tends to be more of a personal one-on-one experience with the person and their loved one that's passed, rather than a new ghost sticking around in a house. So
this is almost like the last goodbye.
Yeah,
I've passed on. I've come back to say all will be well, and excuse me. And yeah, I'll be watching over you, that kind of thing,
Yeah.
and off they go.
Yeah, and some could argue that that's the living individual's way of getting closure. They could say, oh, they're in a
Mhm.
state of grief. That was their way of dealing with their grief. But I'm sure there are cases where if the deceased loved one was capable, they would want to come back and let them know that
Yeah,
they're
I certainly
okay.
would. I think, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Or at least just visit a few people that mess with me and just
Yeah.
find the life out of them for a couple of minutes before I head
Hmm.
off into
Yeah.
the big void in the sky. Sorry, but no, I'm a practical person, yeah, and I think if you're going to be able to do it, then you've got to put it to good use. I would visit loved ones as well, of course I would.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course.
I'd sell a
We'd
few
have some
stores
fun.
before I head off into into the wonder. What about animus objects? When we were visiting this little teen jail, there were a few haunted dolls there, and we were with Jane Harrison from Help My House is Haunted,
Yes.
who also had never was a super lovely person, and I have
Yeah.
since watched a few episodes, and it's a great show. It's so much fun, and yeah, she was talking about a haunted doll that she had that she sold to or
Zach.
gave to Zach Baggins,
Yeah.
and some of these dolls there were also purported to be haunted, and they did look terrifying, to be honest with you. Not like your normal sort of like innocent child's doll. Have you had any experiences with these particular phenomena? And um, if so, what do you think they are? What is haunting them? Clearly, it's not the residual, it's not a poltergeist, it's not the spirit, I'm guessing, of a dearly departed. What is it?
Yeah. See, it's really hard because obviously, like, everyone has different opinions on haunted objects. Yeah, Jane, I don't know Jane personally, but I have known of Jane for many years now. I think 10 years ago, she was very big on the haunted doll scene, and I ended up actually, I think I did a raffle that she was doing, and I ended up winning one of her haunted
Oh
dolls.
God.
And and my husband at the time, when we were living together many years ago, was like, oh, why are you doing this? Why are you bringing these objects into the house? And I was like, oh, it's fine. And the doll turned up and it looked very unassuming. It was a ballerina called Bobby, and I did everything that Jane suggested. She was like, oh, the spirit in the vessel
Hmm.
is the name is Bobby. She likes this, and this. So I tried to welcome this doll. I didn't want to offend, this potential spirit in any way. So I did everything that I was told. And I had the doll in my house, but I didn't notice anything. No paranormal activity that I could sense.
She snubbed you.
I know. I think.
Oh
I think.
God.
Yeah. The doll just was like, nope, I'm
That's
out.
what would happen to me. Like, I'm
I
sure
know.
this, I think everybody's had experiences with this doll,
Yeah.
and I'm getting nothing.
Yeah. But I think I think when people think of haunted dolls, especially when they think of like the Annabelle films
Hmm.
and stuff, I think there's this misconception that there is a spirit actually inside
Aha.
the doll,
Okay.
and because I'm sorry, but if I passed and was given the opportunity to come back, I wouldn't go to some tiny little 10-inch doll and be like, yeah, this is home now.
Exactly.
Like, no. But what I think, my kind of own explanation of it, how I rationalize it, would be that, the doll in question I guess like the stone tape theory, the doll in question was, say, with a child, and that child was in a situation that was quite traumatic. There was something going on with the parents, or the unfortunately maybe a child passed, and then the mother kept the child's doll, and then all that grief was
Hmm.
absorbed into the doll. You just think all of that energy in the
Okay.
universe, just say like, dolls are one object which is very in close contact with individuals, like children, people. They carry those dolls around close to them.
A lot of emotion
So
is sort of put into it almost.
yeah. So that's how I'm kind of
It's interesting.
trying to get my head around it, that, if energy is to go somewhere and a child has passed or a mother has lost a child, and that doll is that, that one thing that reminds, there's going to be that transference of energy rather than a ghost is sat inside a doll. So I'm guessing with Little Dean Jail, you've got all those objects there that have been, around death, serial killers, very, bad individuals. So, I think of all of those items in that one jail. No wonder
together as well. I mean, it's an intensely unpleasant place run by a very nice chap.
I've been up into his house before, up into the flat above. Yeah.
His name is Andy.
Ago. Was it? Yeah, I can't remember. It was many years ago.
He's a stonemason, he told me. And I mean, at the time I was talking to him, and after the shoot or before we went and did the lights out bit, and there are pictures of him all over the place in satanic gowns, by the looks of it. There's Baphomet stuff all over the place.
Yeah.
That to me is more or less sort of like an out Satanist in my view. I wasn't really hiding anything, but I didn't make any judgments. And I had a chat to him, and he was the most normal, nice, easygoing chap I've ever talked to. And I thought, if I met you in a pub, I'd be like, yeah, come back for a coffee at the house. Why not?
Yeah.
Continue the drinking and have a chat. Walking in, like, oh my gosh, I'm never getting out of your life. But of course, that's not him. He's just a lovely, lovely guy. But it is indeed a very strange, particular collection.
Yes.
Not for the faint-hearted. If anybody's watching, before
you can't be easily offended, because there's a lot.
It's the Museum of Good and Evil. That's what it says. It does what it says on the tin, like very, very intensely. And I was happy, although the building was beautiful. So I was just happy to get out and just say, that's it, we did it, and I'm never going back. I don't want to see those things again. But I think that's an interesting theory. That definitely makes sense to me. All of the emotion has been put onto something, and then perhaps, as you say, there's grief or something involved, and this comforter takes all of it.
Yeah.
And like yourself, I wouldn't want to be after my death waking up Woody-like, hoping that Andy will go to bed soon so I can come out and play with the other toys. That's not my bag, really. So I'm glad that you've cleared that up, because that is one of my fears. What about you mentioned earlier the exorcist types, the priests and others who are involved in this genre. So what do you do if your property is tenanted by an unfriendly ghost or a demon, or even a person or object there is possessed in that way, and you want to get rid of it? Do people still call these exorcists or these ghost whisperers even to come in and provide this this valuable social commodity of house clearances? Does that still happen?
It does, and this is one of the I think the reasons why we decided to set up the UK Paranormal Society, for example, was because people do have these issues and they don't know where to go. They don't know where to go to find reliable, trustworthy individuals, because unfortunately there are people out there which will take advantage of people.
I'm sure there are. Yeah.
And, they could go around, someone could go around someone's house, say, I'll cleanse your house for you. That's going to be £200. And if a person is desperate enough, they will pay it. So, we wanted to give people, like advice and guidance and say, do your research. And also it's also dependent on a person's belief system. So someone might not be religious, so they might not have, a priest or a reverend to call because they don't go to church or anything. someone could be quite spiritual. So to them, the logical step would be to go to a medium. But it's trying to find someone who is not going to take advantage of that situation. So it's all about doing your research to find someone credible. But it does happen. If say it's someone haunting a home because they used to live there and they died in the home, and then you and your family have moved in and started knocking down walls, because that's usually home renovations actually start.
That's a trigger.
It's a trigger. Oh. Yeah. So people will live in a house and there'll be no activity, and someone will come around and be like, when the activity starts, and they'll start, questioning and saying, how long have you lived here? When did the activity start? And it usually coincides with the point that they started renovating, because you're, I guess, you're just disheveling everything. And I don't know why, but the spirits that were there don't like it. And they're saying, you're changing my home, I guess. So if it's a spirit like that, a psychic medium could come around and send them over, cross them over to the light, or, cleanse the home. If it's like I said, I'm reading Deliverance by Reverend Jason Bray at the moment, and he says that it's a lot of the time it tends to be a residual haunting, just a memory. So a house cleansing will work and get rid of that. If it's a poltergeist, which is that, the external energy manifestation, usually just, kind of just trying to, let go of some stress, talking, maybe even some family counseling, just trying to, basically giving that energy somewhere to go. But he does say that the scary demonic possessions are extremely, extremely rare. And he's spoken to some reverends that have been doing it many, many years and have never encountered a genuine demonic possession. It's a lot more prevalent in, the paranormal TV shows and films than it is in real life.
I've also spoken to priests that have said something very different. Very similar, or who have at least said that these possessions, you might call them, are often just areas of domination. There's areas of life that are dominated by a force of some kind, but not an individual being sort of controlled, their very actions and words and speech being controlled. But there is that force which has a place somewhere in their life, I suppose, that's dominating, and that can affect everything around them, which would make sense to me as well. Talking about that stuff, the exorcisms, it's strange. I suppose the Bible is one big reference for that, because of course we do hear about in the New Testament some very, very blatant exorcisms, don't we? Where spirits are driven out of people. And for anybody familiar with that, especially if you have a religious background, Catholic, or even if you're Muslim or Jewish or Hindu, there is a lot of demonology involved in those religions. And for the cultures such as our own, that were essentially mostly corporately Christian in nature, until recent times, those things are still there, aren't they? Those are the first ideas we're going to afflict you when something goes wrong, right?
Yeah.
We're going to say, well, of course, it must be X, Y, and Z. We must have a spirit here, or, perhaps there's a demon in the house. Well, let's go back to the equipment, because that, that really interested me. I saw the EVP equipment. That was, that was very interesting. Of course, there are things that could set it off. We actually had, when we checked out a UFO location in Suffolk, actually, we actually had an EVP reading in the middle of a forest where there was nothing around. It wasn't near any of the cameras, just in one spot, and it disappeared every time we moved it from this spot. It was very interesting. So I've seen it work where there's no, I suppose, electrical sources close by. It's amazing. And the Alice box is another one as well. But the other things as well that can actually see, give you a picture of the spirit standing in front of you as well.
The SLS.
That, okay, tell me about that.
So that is the structured light sensor, I think. I might have got that wrong. And so That is originally from the Kinect, so the Xbox, I believe. So someone, I don't know who, don't know who to give credit to. Someone discovered that if you take that camera out and fiddle around with it, you can make this device which will try to map figures. So skeptical people will say that this device is constantly trying to make sense of the environment, so that if something could be, distinguished as a human, it will be like, it will suddenly, appear head, arms, legs, like whether it's like a coat stand next to a table, and stuff like that. So, that's what the skeptics would say. Some people have had fantastic results with the SLS camera, because they will be stood there and they will be like, I just felt something to the right of me. And then on the screen, the stick figure would pop up, So again, like with all of the gadgets, when somebody is having a personal experience and a device can corroborate it, it gives it some sort of, credence. Like, I think it's I think all gadgets can be, have some value to investigating, definitely.
I think I did see it with the Gloucester boys, actually, and to me, it was very interesting. Some footage they had. It almost looked like the way we draw star constellations, right? You've got
Yes.
Perseus and the Pegasus, and Athena and everybody else up there. But you are essentially dot to dot. You're drawing dot to dot lines, and a whole bunch of other stars around that you could choose from. And sometimes, the shape you want to see, I guess, is the one that you do see. It's still there, still exists. And yet, it has to be picked out. So, I was curious about that. The footage I saw was in conjunction with an EVP and an Alice box and some electro voice phenomenon. Is that what it's called?
Yeah. So EVP, and then do you mean the EMF?
Sorry, that's what I meant to say. EMF. Sorry,
Yeah.
everybody listening. I am completely green about this. I apologize. And the EMF and the EVP, the electro voice phenomenon. That's why I said EVP. I was thinking about the next bit, really. So they had this whole conjunction of like 3 or 4 things together.
Yeah.
And the SLS sort of shape, humanoid shape on the screen too. So I thought, well, that's, if I was at hunting cryptids, that would be a strike for me. I'd say, I've got 4 points of contact.
Yeah.
And that's good enough for me, basically.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I think as an investigator, you want to kind of try and get as much proof as possible. So if you've got, 4 things, like you said, in conjunction, all working together and pointing to the same thing, it kind of it's exciting. And it kind of, to me, it's like, well, what more proof are we going to get? Because unfortunately, we are still at the place where we don't know what ghosts are. We're saying, oh, it's energy. We're saying, oh, it's this, but we still scientifically, we don't have devices to measure a ghost. So we are only working with what we've got now. So like you said, the EMF meters, the SLS cameras, all the other gadgets, because that's all that we have available to us at the moment. We're not saying this is going to be proof of a ghost. We're saying that all of these devices will be used in this investigation. And if they all start working together at the same time, then potentially we can say that we have caught proof of something else.
Yeah, but I would agree. No, absolutely.
But you can't convince some people who are, very closed off to this they'll have an excuse for everything, and that's fine. That's their right. But, I think it's good to have a balance. It's good to question things, to say, oh, well, it could have been this, but also still get that excitement from having all those gadgets go off.
Could it be with people's resistance to it, or their discomfort? Could it be based upon point of origin. So I suppose a very religious person, whatever the religion they belong to, but I would imagine the three monotheistic religions would experience quite more heavily than others, would have a very rigid view of life and the afterlife and what is and isn't uh, permissible. From that perspective, I can testify to that. And for other people who aren't religious at all, uh, it's a reminder of the inevitability of death, right? And that perhaps even after you pass on, there could be this possibility that you got to hang about, which for a lot of people I know would be a no-no. They wouldn't be up for that. They wouldn't be up for staying on longer and just sort of watching everybody, wreck their house. Or for me, if that was me, like I'm in my house, I spent my whole life paying for it, and suddenly you've come in, you've put like an embossed paisley feature wall in the center of the room, right?
Yeah.
In pink and blue, and a 100-inch TV screen, whatever the thing is that you don't like in your own personal space, that would be a sort of, if there was a hell, that would be it for me, I think. Stopping on and watching that. So, I just wonder if there's, spiritual, so religious, sociological, and a cultural reaction to it that we all share in common. Either it reminds us that we're going to die, or it questions our own personal beliefs, or makes us think that we should maybe have some because we're not sticking around.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's the interesting thing. I think everybody's experience is personal to them, and that's not even just about ghosts and the paranormal. That is in everyday life. Everybody is living their experience, their beliefs, and everything that they've experienced in the past affects how they are in today. So when it comes to the paranormal, if people, I guess there's the saying that people can be blockers, where we would, we'd have when I was working for the events company, and you would have a girlfriend who was really into the paranormal, and she dragged along her boyfriend who was like, this is all nonsense. I'm just here because of her, and when that guy would be around, nothing would happen. Like, it was flat, and he people would give him, or that type of individual, the name of a blocker, because I guess when you were so, I don't want to say it because I don't believe it, it stops. I guess the energy isn't right. And then when you're with a group of people who are all high energy, like, I've been seeing, ghosts since I was 12, and whenever I go anywhere, the ghosts are always attracted to me. Then suddenly lots is happening, and you're hearing bangs and knocks, and you're doing Ouija boards and it's flying around and stuff, and and then again me as, say, the host is standing back saying, well, when we're talking about poltergeist activity and that energy transference, it is maybe that a cause, because they are so wanting to have that experience of paranormal activity that excitement is almost creating it subconsciously. So
they've almost signed up, I suppose, to the experience, and that we had an experience like that in the chamber, because when the Gloucester boys were holding up the EMF in one direction and asking questions, it was lighting up. I was standing right next to them. They gave it to me, and I held it, and nothing. I was their blocker, and I was their blocker. And it happened in several places and locations and things that we did. We didn't do a lot of ghost stuff, but a little bit on the series we've been messing with. And it was funny to me because every time I held it, I thought, well, that's the end of the party, basically, And it really was. So I can testify to the fact that what Leanne is telling you all about blockers is true. We do exist.
Yeah, but then I think I'm a blocker. I feel like I'm a blocker sometimes, because like I go places now and I'm like, come on, I want to see something.
Yeah.
And then nothing will happen. The last two investigations I've gone to, which was Woodchester Mansion and Lanterney Secunda Manor, Nothing happened.
Really?
It was absolutely flat. And now I'm there going like, I want something to happen, but nothing is happening. And then I'm thinking, is my desperation just off-putting?
Oh, we're too needy.
Yeah, I'm too needy. I'm
No,
like,
we're both too needy. So this is the thing. So I've realized I've been a blocker now all my life because I've been searching for cryptids all over the world. Loch Ness a whole bunch of times, days, hours on end, at night, all different times, nobody around. All the different Bigfoot things in the woods by myself, prime opportunities, all that stuff. Never, not one thing, not ever, which could mean that they just don't exist. I am perfectly happy to accept that. That's fine. That's what investigation's about. But now, after our conversation, yeah, I know that I'm just a blocker. And that's why they won't come. Just a blocker.
It's when you stop. I think it's the whole like when you just stop looking,
like I don't care.
Suddenly it'll just be there and you'll be like, oh, okay, cool.
Right. There it is then. It's interesting talking about that kind of stuff. And I know that you like other things apart from ghosts. And I've really I needed to know everything you knew in this conversation about ghosts because I'm green, I'm in the woods, I'm alone, I don't have a compass to get me out. But can you give people like me and other people pro tips? People who want to get started looking for things, how should they do it? Who should they contact? Groups like yourselves, for example, and before they go out and spend thousands of pounds on equipment, what's the first one or two cheapy things they can get hold of that might give them some results?
Yeah. So if they were looking to just start going out investigating, go along to some investigations, because there are so many paranormal teams out there. I think there was a study done or a survey done by a newspaper, and there was like, God, I think it was something like, oh my God, I can't remember the number. It was like 27,000 paranormal investigators in the UK or some crazy big number. So everyone investigates differently. So I think, you've got to find your style or what, kind of what way you want to go. So just go along, tag along on some event companies or tag along with some, smaller teams in your area, see what's going on. But I think the basics would just be your senses. To start off with, before you're using the gadgets, it's just your senses, pen and paper, just notice things, try to, get bearings with your surroundings. If you're hearing a noise, okay, how often is that noise? Is that every 30 seconds? Because if it is, and it's a constant, maybe it's not paranormal. Maybe it's something to do with the building. Maybe it's the heating or whatever. A camera is great because go around, snap pictures and stuff. Because again, after the fact, if you have an experience, after the fact, you'll try and recall it, and your memory will fail you. You'll be like, oh, it was there was a staircase to the left, and it was the door, and you start to try and fill in the gaps, and it's not until you look back at pictures that you go, I got that all wrong. And then you then start to question your own memory because you're thinking, if I could get that wrong, am I misinterpreting what I saw? And that's the thing, is that you experience things, and you try to retell the story, and you'll be amazed at how the story changes slightly over the fifth or the 10th telling of that same story. First of all, I heard a little creak, and then by the 10th time you've told that story, it was a loud bang and the wall shook. It's writing down what you experienced as well straight away.
So like a pencil and a pad, that's what we take out all the time.
Pen, paper, camera. That's the basics, and then once you're a bit more familiar with how the gadgets how the gadgets are activated by EMF or heat sensor or this type of stuff, start using them if you want, and that's fine, but just be aware of natural causes. So I think if anyone wants to start going out investigating, just please don't trespass. That's my big bugbear.
Bring a friend, I'm guessing, as well.
Bring a friend.
Tell people where you're going.
Yeah. I know churches are would look like an easy, cheap way, but don't do it. Because I've heard of churches ending up closing and shutting their doors at night because people are going into graveyards and investigating. And then the church wardens, who would normally have the church doors open all night for a safe haven for the community, are saying, you know what, we're going to have to shut because we don't like the people coming in. So it's just think about the community where you're investigating. I know it's not cheap, but try to go with companies or there are locations, like you said, there's woods. I live in Bristol. There's stories of haunted woods in the centre of Bristol. You can go there, it's free. But just think about where you're going.
I think it's great advice, and I definitely will be taking some of it on myself to stop. Maybe I can move past this blocking I'm afflicted with and finally have an experience. And it's been really wonderful talking to you. I've learned a lot. I really have. And thank you for answering all my questions.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been really fun.
Awesome. Take care.